last week's parsha. There, Moshe turns to God and says, "You appointed me to be your agent, to save the Jewish people, to redeem them from Egypt. But ever since I've come on the scene, things have only become worse. Things have gotten so much worse." As God begins his response in last week's parsha, he says, and now you're going to see. Don't worry, you will witness the redemption of the Jewish people from Egypt. However, he continues in this week's parsha with the power of his response. Realize redemption from Egypt is not just one process. It is a 5-pronged process. We have the 5 Lishonot Shel Geula, 5 languages of redemption, where God describes in the first 4 steps things that happened relatively soon after the Jewish people emerged from Egypt. The stopping of the subjugation, the redemption of Egypt, the destruction of Egypt, and the receiving of the Torah, and the understanding that God is God. However, the 5th language, Veheveti etchem al haaretz, where God says, "I will take you to the land of Israel," that does not happen immediately. Only after 40 years in the desert, where the majority of those who lived in Egypt, who left Egypt from age 20, did not merit to get to the land of Israel. But the Torah describes, nevertheless, in this week's parsha, God says to Moshe, "Veheveti etchem al haaretz," I will take the Jewish people to the land of Israel. This is the land that I promised our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And then the Torah describes, "V'natati ota lachem morasha ani Hashem." And this is what I gave to you as a morasha. I am God. Morasha is very similar to the Hebrew word Yerusha, inheritance. However, it clearly means something different. As the Jerusalem Talmud points out, the language of morasha is lashon diha. It is a weakened form of an inheritance. An inheritance is essentially something that is given by way of death, by way of passing away, bequeathed to the next generation. The next generation receives that money without any effort on their behalf, or whatever that inheritance may entail. However, morasha is something which a person has to work for. The Baal HaTurim points out that the nation, the Jews at the time of leaving Egypt, did not actually get the inheritance of the land. They did not actually move to Israel. However, as Rabbi Binyamin points out, it is nevertheless a morasha. A morasha is an internal contract, something that is yours even if you don't have physical possession of it, something that you can pass on to the generations, and that's part of its power. The Torah only refers to 2 things as a morasha. This week's parsha, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is known as a morasha. And at the end of the Torah, in Vezot HaBracha, the final parsha in the Torah, it tells us, Torah tzivalanu Moshe, morasha kilat Yaakov. The Torah is commanded to Moshe, but it is given as a morasha. It is this eternal inheritance, a heritage of the Jewish people. Only in relation to these 2 ideas is the word morasha used. And part of that represents that these are 2 of the 3 things which the Talmud tells us are niknei b'yisurim. The learning of Torah is something that anyone can learn on a minimal level, but in order to really achieve and connect and grow in one's Torah, it requires effort. The same thing with the land of Israel. The land of Israel is always ours. It is a heritage which remains ours. As the Netziv points out in this week's parsha, even when we are in an exile, it is still ours even though we don't have physical possession of it. It is still something which we pass on to the generations and continue with this promise of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. However, the Talmud tells us something fascinating. Al tikri morasha ela me'urasa. Do not read this word morasha as an inheritance, but rather me'urasa. It is something you are betrothed to, engaged to. The connection that the Jewish people have to Torah and Eretz Yisrael is a connection where we always recognize that we're in a state of ecstasy, waiting to take this relationship to the next level. To be betrothed means to be legally married, but on the other hand, not to be living together, not to be connected in the way that a married couple would be ultimately connected. And therefore, the Torah is essentially telling us these 2 connections, the land of Israel and the Torah, no matter how connected, no matter how much you love them, increase your love and try to connect with them even more. Try to bring them even closer. And what will really determine how connected and how powerful that connection is what you bequeath to the next generation. If you bequeath this heritage, if you recognize that this heritage is one of love and passion, so even if you live in the land of Israel, as I'm speaking to you now, there is always more. We can further that love. We can further that connection. to the Torah and the Torah of the land as well, the more connected we are to the ideals, the more we educate the next generation, the more we connect to it, the more we will deepen our relationship and have a tremendous amount of love and affection, and be able to drink the fifth cup, be able to drink that cup of Vaeira, where the entire nation of the Jewish people will be here in the land of Israel with our eternal heritage, the land of Israel and the Torah. Have a wonderful Shabbat Shalom.